is to fill in most of the time between now and the hydrogen applications in mining and resources launch reception, which starts in about just over half an hour. And the third one, as Adrian said, is to facilitate a panel session where you're the panelists. Okay? So here is your opportunity. If you thought of questions or issues you wanted earlier panelists or earlier speakers to address, your opportunity to ask the whole audience what those questions, and maybe think about some questions that I could ask. So maybe, firstly I should ask, does anybody want a point they want to raise now?
I feel a little ignorant on one particular point, or several points, but that is, what is the overall energy balance, you might say, for making hydrogen and then burning it? There were some figures a little earlier on which said something about 60% efficient. First of all, you've got, if you start with a kilowatt hour of electricity and you electrolyze the water, I assume, you generate hydrogen and oxygen, and then you put that into a fuel cell and you use it again. Is that full cycle 60% efficient, or what are the steps in terms of efficiency?
Does anybody want to comment on that?
I can answer that.
Yep, thanks, Lena.
I'll try to. So it takes about 50 kilowatt hours of energy to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. And 1 kilogram of hydrogen has 39 kilowatt hours of energy in it at its higher heating value. Now the round trip efficiency of the electrolyzer fuel cell process is about 30%. So the electrolyzer is approximately 75 to 80% efficient, and your fuel cell is approximately 48 to 54% efficient. So when you take that all into account, you're getting a total efficiency of around 30 to 40%, 35% round trip efficiency. Yeah, including the electrical losses and the inverters, etc. We've been running power stations at around 27% efficient for the last 40 years. Our cars are around 25 to 27%. So it's not as if this is new. We do this anyway. What else do I... It's not really about round-trip efficiency. It's around the round-trip economics. So when you've got energy that's being spilled, because we're embedding more and more renewables into our system, that spilled energy can now be directed towards doing something with it. And that's the
capture 30% of your spilled energy.
Yeah, so if you're only got 10% spilled energy, what is the value of that over 5 or 10 or 20 years? If that's got a certain value, let's attribute that to the capital costs associated with introducing the hydrogen solution for that value, and let's then advertise or market the fact that our plant is a certain size renewable percentage in its in the way it operates. So
thank you very much. You've clarified that, but you also mentioned that lovely word capex. What is the ratio, you might say, of capital to kilowatt hours? How do you rate the cost of a hydrogen generation process?
So how do we rate the...
You wanted to have, say, 1 megawatt of hydrogen.
Okay, so
how much would that cost, capex?
Okay, so it depends on the size of the scale. So our large scale solutions, you saw the 17.5 megawatt electrolyzer. It's approximately, and it depends on the site, capital cost of about $1.5 million per megawatt. So that 17.5 megawatt unit will cost in the region of about $25 million. But it depends on, is it a remote site? Is it local? What's the piping required? how much storage is required, water purification, etc. So that can vary somewhat. From the fuel cell side, I would probably hand that over to Alan because it's probably around $4 million per megawatt, 4.5.
Yeah, I mean that's a containerized special system for outdoor applications on a single megawatt. And I think in tune with what Warner's saying is it all really depends on your scale. I mean our prices both on electrolyzers and fuel cells can be cut pretty much in half on scale very quickly. Again, what I mentioned earlier, if you're doing small little projects, they can be a bit expensive. But if you're starting to do scale, and that's the challenge I think to everybody here is to look at scale, then we're getting closer to the fossil fuel industry prices that you have today, even with all the fossil fuel subsidies that are out there today.
But, one of the things that you need to consider was, on my presentation, when I talked about the amount of diesel that we will offset over 20 years, the value of that diesel that we offset over 20 years with that hydrogen hybrid power plant system is $908 million worth of diesel that we would not need to purchase. And to reallocate that capital, that operational cost of $908 million to renewables and hydrogen production, and you've got lots of change left over. So it already starts to make sense when you consider how much of your operational cost you're offsetting.
And maybe if I could jump in, because it was very good, interesting listening to that dialogue. There were a number of interesting concepts that were introduced. The first one was the fact that we have to make the hydrogen in the first place, because hydrogen is a new concept, because it's not an energy source the way a fossil fuel is. It is an energy transporter. So all we're doing, we're making it in one place and using it in other places. Of course, it's ironic because hydrogen is the most common element in the universe. Most of the universe is hydrogen. It was all formed a moment after the Big Bang, and ultimately we all came from hydrogen, transformed a few times through stars and things like that. And unfortunately, that really nice hydrogen that exists throughout the universe doesn't exist on the Earth. It's all in the form of water and us. So we've got a lot of hydrogen in us. We have to do stuff to make it. And certainly the work that Siemens and Ballard and other suppliers of technology provide are the means to make it and then to use it. An important concept that was also introduced was, maybe we shouldn't be so concerned about the round trip efficiency of hydrogen generation as against other forms of fuel combustion, but more the economics. And it does raise the question, because we all came here for a reason, and presumably it was because we are interested in hydrogen and interested in seeing it used in mining applications. If your CEO or the chair of your company asks you, okay, you went to this hydrogen in mines day, what do we need to look for? What has to happen for us to then make a decision to seriously investigate or to implement a hydrogen-based power supply in our site? I'm the CEO, I'm the chair, I've just asked you the question, what's the answer? We're all interested to hear. Remember, your job is on the line at the moment. I paid for you to come to this day. I want to know, did I get value or not?
Hello, I'm Anastasia from South 32 Diversified Mining Metals Company. Well, first question, what's our energy strategy? So I really liked Fortescue's presentation in the morning where it was very clear, articulated, our roadmap going forward, and there are some responsible parties behind. So, having a roadmap, having a strategy in energy, and for company like ours, it's also good to find that, who's responsible, because it does require a lot of collaboration internally between different units, and it can't be just, one asset. Each asset should have their own energy strategy, because we want to achieve those, great R&D solutions. Thank you.
Another one?
I'd say to you as my CEO, I'd say, what sort of company are we? Are we one that want to brave and be a pioneer in this particular technology and spend all the money up front, or do we want to sit back, not get distracted by this hydrogen distraction, and wait and be a follower when the technology is known, it's economic, and it's sensible to implement it at our operation? So there's going to be two kinds of boards in this world. The boards that want to lead, and the boards that are happy to follow. And it'll depend on the economics at the time, I would think.
Any more comments?
Hi. I would say, perhaps slightly in response to that there's some degree of middle ground, which is commitment to that concept of competition and collaboration in this space. Because as a nation we stand to gain from individuals progressing and moving forward in hydrogen technology. And I would say that whether our company chooses to be a leader or a follower, making a commitment to doing the deep work, whether it's through committees such as the standards committees, supporting and being actively involved in the work of the National Hydrogen Strategy is really important. And every contributor to that stands to gain from it. And it's a way of ensuring that you don't have to be a leader or a fast follower. You can be involved in the progression of the solution.
Okay, well maybe if I could pick up on actually there were two good points raised by two speakers. One was what kind of company do we want to be? Because maybe I can ask the question, is something like running a diesel generator is a pretty easy thing to do. They've been around for a year or so. We know how to run a diesel generator. We saw with all of the discussion of solar and renewable and wind on mine sites, from what I saw, that fell absolutely in the area of the independent power producer. Because mine sites miners were never interested in running solar farms themselves. I mean, therefore I ask you, is if we move to these even more exotic hybrid power supplies, should we leave mining behind and just say, okay, we need a class of power producers that will provide power to a mine site, and you as a miner don't care how they get that power. So if they choose to do it by a hydrogen route or any other route, that's up to them. That's not up to you. Is that one future for the Australian mining industry? Leave it all up to others to provide the power, and just so long as it's there, you don't care?
Well, I think it really depends on the cost component. I think it really depends on the cost component of that energy in your mining process. So, if your total cost to mine your product is 50% of your total operational cost, then you have a vested interest in the energy side, and you want to be sure that you know well and that you can do better than anyone else. So I think that's an important factor to take into consideration. The other is, what's your strategy as a mining company in the future? Are you planning on mining your own resources going forward, or potentially providing mining as a service? Are you going to be the new Uber in mining in the future. And if that's the case, then why not take it all on? Where energy plays a major role in that process of mining, or cost.
Any responses to that? Will somebody put their hand up?
As a miner, you don't want to get distracted through non-core activities. Energy generation is one of those. You need energy to turn your mills to produce your product. All the miner really wants is to be able to deliver a return to their shareholders. And so if you can, as you say, deliver that energy at the lowest possible cost, then that is what the miner will be happy with. If it's the lowest possible cost of an energy source, and you're delivering it at the lowest possible cost, it represents a small percentage of your production costs, that's going to make them happy because it'll deliver them a dividend in the end.
I think we need to bear in mind that in future our the amount of operational staff that would be required in a hybrid power plant would be far less than our traditional power plant based on coal or diesel. A lot of it becomes automated. Digitalization plays an important role. We've got wind and solar, which is essentially free energy. It's generating the power. There are few staff involved. Yes, you've got the hydrogen component, but those devices are also passive. They have no moving parts or very few moving parts. So from a power generation point of view, your staff and operational staff content is much lower than on your typical hybrid power plant that we would have today. So we need to bear in mind that in future, a lot of that hybrid power plant generation will be autonomous. It will look after itself. We will have the digital services sitting in IoT platforms. We'll be able to monitor from remote, and we will be able to know when things are going to fail before they do so, and do maintenance when required. So I think there's a whole change and shift on the way energy related to mining could look in the future, starting on greenfield applications, new mining operations. So I think that's something also to consider.
Oh, well, there's a question. Somebody's hand up.
Thanks. Hello, this is Daniel from AGO. I have a point of view on this as well. Look, we're obviously a generator, largest generator in the country, so we love to own power plants and that sort of thing. But to what Warren was saying, it's real that there is no fuel, and although it's not core business for a miner, these systems you just install them and pretty much let them go. There is a need for asset management. Yes, there is a need for asset management services and to pass that risk to somebody else. But I don't see why not a miner will actually own these systems. If we look further into other industries, for example, we can look at the aluminum industry, where now people are talking about green aluminum, just getting extra or higher prices just because you have a different or a lower footprint on the type of product that you're producing. Nothing is to say that there could be an angle for mining as well to use energy as a competitive advantage.
I was going to carry it. I get to carry it.
Saved your life. I think we've just got to also keep in mind that we're sort of falling into the trap of energy as electricity. And as I can't remember who pointed out, it's only 30 or 40% of the emissions in the country. And hydrogen is actually massively valuable in your processes as hydrogen. And it might not be the best thing to do to go to electricity every time. So I think we need to almost change the dialogue of how we're going to use hydrogen. Because limiting it to electricity is sort of missing out on a huge opportunity.
Gus?
I'd like to add to that. And so, Warner, I like everything you said, except that there's no such thing as free energy. And electricity is not free either. Renewable energy is not free. You have to put in the capital to generate it. And also, 100% agree that electricity is not the only way to make hydrogen either. Particularly in the emerging approaches, there are many thermochemical ways that can also make hydrogen. And likewise, if we think about our whichever process we've got, our mine as a system, which was the point that Rachel made very well, you know, if we've got heat needs, it may not be best to start via electricity. Maybe it is, and we need to evaluate, we need to think about it as a system. And likewise, if you're talking about going from solar radiation to heat, you may be much better to go directly to heat than go via electricity to hydrogen or something else. But nevertheless, it's much more complicated than that because you have to manage the variability of the process. But definitely endorse the fact that hydrogen has got many, many values that could be higher than electricity, especially in a mining process, or we've got other chemicals, and that we need to think about the system, and maybe not, electricity may not be the right part of it, you know, might not be the only way into that.
Okay, so let me, as I said, we've now moved over to the left side of the house, as it were, because over that side they talked about boring stuff, the cost, the economics of using hydrogen as a fuel source in renewable hydrogen as fuel source in mining. Now, some of you may have noticed that we had a federal election about a month ago, and a lot of your boards and that sort of the companies you work for probably had a sigh of relief, thinking, well, isn't that good? We don't have a 45% reduction target. We only have a 26 to 28% reduction target. We're off scot-free. Well, you know, as I said, Energetics does climate change stuff amongst other things, and let me tell you, your board is wrong. You're all going to be subject to carbon pricing because in Australian law, there is carbon pricing scheme today. It was actually implemented by the Abbott government, which is somewhat ironic, but Tony Abbott's carbon pricing scheme will affect you all. So, new way of looking at the role of things like hydrogen in mining is a means of reducing emissions from your operations so that you don't have to go to the market to buy Australian carbon credit units. It was mentioned in one of the earlier sessions to equip to the Clean Energy Regulator so that you don't exceed your safeguard mechanism baseline. So the question to the left side of the house is, what are you going to do about that? Do you see hydrogen as part of the suite of initiatives that your businesses will need to do to meet your safeguard mechanism requirements? Who wants to have the turn at catching the ball? Oh, one at the back.
Okay, so my name's Nat, I'm from Pilbara Metals Group. We are actually going to be building a manganese sulphate plant in East Rockingham. We're trying to get our emissions down as far as we possibly can. And actually coming here today, we've probably realised that instead of just having a gas turbine that can use normal gas, that we could potentially go hydrogen if anyone here wants to collab with us and interested in running pilot plants. So yeah, that's a change that we may be able to implement, and our feasibility studies are about to start next month, so that will be something we'll be looking into pretty close.
Well, that was a very good point that Nat made, and that was about pilot studies, feasibility studies, that sort of thing. I mean, what needs to be done? What do you feel needs to be done to get your businesses to at least start testing things at a pilot scale? Should you go run into ARENA and see whether ARENA will fund it? Talk to the CEFC to see whether you can get some appropriate funding from the CEFC? Do it internally or what? Remember, your job is on the line here because your boss paid you to told you to come here and wants to get an answer. So what is it? Do you think that we're a decade too short and you want to see technology more clearly defined, or do you think, based on what you've heard today, what you've read about, that we're already there with with hydrogen. Are we all looking down, as they call them, the terms being used already, the valley of death? All we need to do is bridge the valley of death. We've got a technology that's technically feasible. It just needs to be deployed at scale to become cost effective, i.e. you've got to bridge the valley of death, or are we not yet at the point at the start of the valley of death? Does more R&D need to be done?
So, in terms of meeting the safeguards mechanism, you have to say there are a lot cheaper ways of doing it than hydrogen in mining at the moment. For instance, there's you can ACCUs and there's all the international credits, and arguably you could just use ordinary renewable energy credits to satisfy safeguard mechanisms. There's already a mechanism for doing that. So I would say to you, if I was offering financial advice about the best way to meet some theoretical safeguards mechanism, that hydrogen is still not the cost-effective way to do it.
Well, maybe that's then a challenge to the other side of the room, because you've just lost your business case. Well, we need them all. We need them all. When I came over from Sydney yesterday, I think the New South Wales State of Origin team was on the plane, so we need one of those guys in the back of the road.
All my Australian friends in Malaysia have taught me all about footy, so I'll give a real-world example, which I think is interesting. A company called ASKO in Norway, largest supermarket chain there. They did their own business case, and they figured out 30 trucks converting to hydrogen was cheaper than running diesel trucks. Imagine. They have, of course, in Norway it's mostly renewable energy, it's hydro, but they did their own business case internally. And then they went to Scania, and Scania, so they said, give me a hydrogen truck. Scania said, no, I cannot do hydrogen truck, right? So they're like, what are we going to do? They said again, Scania, give me a hydrogen truck. No, can't do it. Okay, I'm going to go to Volvo. Okay, I'll build you a hydrogen truck. They came to us. We've built 4 trucks for them now. And once they get up to 30, they'll be the point where it's cheaper than running diesel trucks. So this is where a company that's a large company like ASKO, a big supermarket, had said there isn't a technology available. Well, there is technology available. We just have to push our OEMs. In the mining industry, that might be Komatsu, and say, give me a hydrogen vehicle, right? And the economics are becoming more and more attractive. We're reducing costs, both from the electrolyzer and the fuel cell space every day. So, and that's our main initiatives as companies now, is just reducing costs to become affordable and meet fossil fuel. So this is a real world example where you can say, we can do it, we can meet fossil fuel prices if we find a niche or an application that makes sense for us in a specific area.
Hi, David Campbell from Atlanta Energy. I was thinking about this as, let's have a think about, if we're going to try and meet our carbon reduction target, say it's 26% by 2030, and you're trying to do that across your mining business. On the power side, how are you going to do that? Well, it's super easy. Put in solar today. If you're on diesel, put in solar today and you've got your 25%. No problem. Does hydrogen have a role to play in that? I don't think it needs to at this stage, because you can just get it by putting in solar. But if you look at your trucking fleet, how are you going to reduce your diesel-related emissions from your trucking fleet by 25%? I think there's no solution for that today. So I think that's where the mining sector has a role to play, to really push the OEMs to bring something to the table, to come up with a solution in that area, because at the moment there's just nothing there. On the power side, the solution's already there to get us a decent production, and I think there's other sectors of the economy as well that are going to drive that power sector side, where the appropriate niches are, to bring hydrogen into the power sector. And a lot of the time it's going to be grid-connected solutions, it's going to be big utilities that will find places to use hydrogen for firming and things like that. The mining sector may not really need to push the innovation in that space so hard, but on the fleet side, there's nobody else that's going to do it. So I'd say that's the challenge I'd put to the mining industry. If you guys don't do it in the fleet space, nobody else is going to do it.
Thank you. Louis Kent, BHP. I work in the fleet space and in the trying to decarbonise the fleet. We'll be presenting on that on Thursday afternoon with an ICMM hat on. So I guess there's a few points that I'll raise that relate to that. One is through the International Council on Mining and Metals, 32 of the biggest mining companies in the world have made commitments at a CEO level. Ambition statement is zero emissions fleet by 2040. 2040 sounds like a long way away, but it's maybe 2 fleet procurement cycles away. So it's pretty soon. So there's a lot of collaboration happening, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. And the OEMs are in the room, so there's communication there. One thing that I'll say about this assumption that mining companies can talk to OEMs and say, well, we want hydrogen trucks, so go and build one. They'll say, do you want one? Or like, do you want more? Because there's a lot of R&D involved. With one of the big OEMs that makes a lot of the big trucks that roll around, the mining sector makes up 10% of their global revenue, because they make a lot of construction equipment as well. And the biggest mining company is 10% of that. So straight away you're talking about pretty small numbers. If you've got 1% knocking on your door and demanding that you do something that takes up huge amounts of R&D, they might not be so keen. So it's about, are we ready to buy lots of trucks, or are we wanting to do one truck? And for a company to make that decision, it needs to de-risk that investment. So maybe a pilot trial with one truck. Going back to what the industry can do to make things easier, it's about making, so like BHP and other mining companies in the room, South32 is a great example of public decarbonisation target. Rio's got a lot of discussion in their sustainability report about decarbonising as well. But it's not core business to produce hydrogen vehicles, for example. It's a peripheral that is meeting other requirements that are also considered by many as being non-core business. So it's like a peripheral to a peripheral. So these companies, would you expect them to be the ones that are creating this entire new industry? Or should it be the industry that is about to benefit from the creation of that industry? So my challenge would be to all of that, like to have a pilot trial of a hydrogen truck, which I think my colleague Catherine has openly said, we want to do that ASAP. But we're not an R&D house for building hydrogen trucks. So we want the industry to bring in the hydrogen production, the compressing, the refueling, the truck component. There's the tanks are going to be done by another person, the fuel cell, the integration with control systems. All of that kind of stuff needs to be, like, if a consortium of companies came to a mining company or came to us and said, we've sorted all of that out, there's a ribbon on top, we need a site to develop and maybe some money. But once again, would you expect that there's companies that are clearly going to benefit out of creating this massive industry. They're the ones that should be investing in creating a massive industry, not we wouldn't benefit out of it other than, okay, we can buy vehicles that can assist in meeting our decarbonisation requirements. And it's worth remembering, like, there's a lot of discussion about hydrogen is the only way that you can do this. I think there's many ways that you can actually, so the challenge here is decarbonising material movement. There's multiple ways of doing that. And even decarbonising fleet, there's multiple ways of doing that. So it's not, but I think it's too early to pick one. And chances are it'll be a mix of all sorts of things. So don't expect mining companies to pick one of the many options and say we're going to invest huge amounts in that without investing in the other bits. So I think there's make it easy and you'll have a higher chance of success. I was recently a consultant and was surprised going into mining companies how stretched, how lean the teams are, how stretched they are just doing core business. There's not huge numbers of people available to do long-term strategic R&D projects. They're very lean teams. Do the work for them. Get that packaged solution. Go with an easy proposition that people can say yes or no to, and don't expect the mining companies to have massive amounts of technical expertise in this area. Make it easy and put yourself in a good position.
Can I follow up on that point? That's Louis, because that was if you like, a call to the OEMs. To an extent.
OEMs of hydrogen equipment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Now, we heard earlier today that the Commonwealth is developing the national hydrogen strategy. Now, given that multiple states are looking at exporting hydrogen to Asia, the gas networks are saying, what about us? We've got huge infrastructure, invested infrastructure in pipelines. We've demonstrated in the southern states, you cannot electrify heating because of the huge hit on the power networks. Use the gas networks and renewable gas. And we're looking at the generators themselves saying, oh, we need things like hydrogen to firm renewable generation. 3 very, very large uses for hydrogen. I wonder if anybody in Canberra is even thinking about the resources sector. So what do you think, what's the message that the resources sector, the mining sector, should be sending to Alison, who's leading the preparation of the national hydrogen strategy? What message should the domestic resources industry be giving to the Commonwealth on how hydrogen should play out in Australia? Now, we're pretty well out of time for this session, but maybe that's more a question for you to take away, because the Commonwealth is going to be putting out more discussion papers seeking input from stakeholders, and arguably the mining sector, the resources sector is a major stakeholder in Australia. So here is your opportunity to have an input into a national strategy which may well be framing how energy is done in this country for quite some time. So thank you for your participation.